Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Becoming a Strategic Salesperson by Cliff Quicksell Jr. Today, you're listening and using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to Cliff by typing them into the questions pane on the control panel, and they will be answered at the end. Now, a little bit about Cliff, if you didn't get to meet him or see any of his presentations at Convex last month. Cliff Quicksell Jr. MAS Plus has been involved in the promotional products and sportswear industries for the past 35 years. During his tenure, he has achieved the MAS Plus Professional Designation, Master Advertising Specialist Plus. He has been actively involved in PPAI, the International Trade Association for the Promotional Products Industry, serving on various committees as a facilitator at all PPAI and ASI shows, and as a member of PPAI's Ambassador Speakers Bureau for over 15 years. Welcome, Cliff, and I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabina, and thanks everyone for being on the call today. First of all, before I begin, I would like to, I guess, sort of apologize. I know that I promised a lot of you who were at Convex the PowerPoints and whatnot, but I have been on a whirlwind since Convex. I just got back home, believe it or not, about 2 days ago. So I have it in my plans to send everyone that requested the PowerPoints and all the documentation that they'd requested during the keynote and the 2 master classes. So do forgive me for the delay on that, but I look forward to getting that out to you very soon. Once again, thank you for being on the webinar today, talking about becoming a strategic salesperson and building a better future for you. A lot of times people get into this business, pardon me, and I think that it's easy because there's a low barrier of entry to get into the promotions business. And I think there comes a reckoning, if you will, where you realize that you can potentially just not keep doing it the same old way you've been doing it, and you need to make some changes. I know that happened to me. I know there was a time when I had my business and I was just trudging along, doing the same old thing, getting the rejections, getting some sales, profits up, profits down, disappointments, some good sales. And then I realized, thank God it was sooner than later, that in order to be more profitable, be more successful, I really did have to create a strategy for myself, one that had systems in place and things that I had to continue to do on a regular basis in order to be successful. And you know, the reality is success it's governed by, I guess everybody has a different opinion about what success is. So I'm not here to critique anybody and say that's not really successful, because if it's really is, if it's worth it to you and it feels good to you in terms of where you're at, then that's fine. But I do encourage you that with everything that you do to be kind of open-minded about potential opportunities, how you can successfully grow, how can you make a significant difference, not only to your clients, but also for yourself. Also for yourself and your family. How can you go about doing that in such a way that it just, again, that you have a better strategy in place and the success just actually follows. So the question is, you know, why is it important to be strategic? I mean, I know that's kind of an obvious question, and furthermore, what does it mean? And nowadays, we all know, we've all experienced this, and as I said in my keynote at APPA, you know, there's nothing really truly different other than an accent, if you will, as it relates to business from the folks in Australia, New Zealand, the US, Canada, globally. I've spoken all over, and we all experience the same challenges. The reality today is that today's buyer is smarter, more savvy, and has multiple tools in which to circumvent the seller, which is us. So you have people with Alibaba going direct to China. you have the internet, you have the millennial and Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, the people that are smart, savvy on the internet. And they really, in my opinion, that's the thing that's really caused me a lot of cause to say, how do I compete in this space, especially in an area, in a world where there's limited barrier to entry? I have, in some cases, suppliers going direct. I have, in many cases, my competition doesn't have a strong business acumen and is selling on price. How do I go about communicating better with my clients? How do I do that in a strategic way in order to position myself as more of a creative resource? The reality is that I would, from my experience in working with folks, I find that most people that I work with and I talk to initially coming out of the blocks are very reactive. They're very reactive to the way they go to business, how they sell, different things that and ways that they go about doing things. And for me, I think that if you start looking at the way the world is changing, how the lines are becoming blurred, expansion is taking place. We have tons of merger and acquisition that's going on. The buyers, as we mentioned, are becoming more smarter and savvy and younger. And the reality is, in some cases, they don't really want to see you face to face. Some do, but the majority are so busy because what's happening in big corporations is they're scaling down. People are taking on multiple tasks as an individual. So you're not having one person that's just doing one activity. They may be doing multiple activities. So their time is stretched. Budgets are stretched. They're doing things like segmentation and things like that. And this is one of the things that we'll talk about that I think it's important for us to do as well. Technology is raging. The way technology is moving forward is absolutely mind-boggling to me on how things are moving along. And I think it's important for us to keep in mind that that is not going to change. In fact, it's going to get even faster, more dynamic and fluid. So if we know that those things are happening, what do we do to stay a step ahead of the curve? I did some research about on a technology seminar I was doing, and was trying to figure out, how is technology moving along? Because this is a big thing that really drives our industry at every level. And they said from the year 1900 to 1950, that those 50 years of technological growth in 1995 were condensed to 3 months. So think about that. We know how it is now. I mean, look, Apple just came out with their new Apple XS or whatever it was called today. The phone's over $1,000, but the things that it does are remarkable. I think I saw it holds 120,000 photos. I mean, think back just a few years back, not that many years ago, that people were hauling around those big heavy bricks. So technology is driving every aspect of our business. And then we have the other competitors that are coming into the space, much like Amazon, Walmart, and things like that are competing heavily and soon to be competing heavily. How do we stay ahead of the curve? How do we look at ways to position ourselves? And this is why I think it's so important for us to look at developing strategies that make sense, where we can actually niche ourselves and things of that nature in order to maintain market share and to grow a profitable and successful business. So it's important for us to look at areas of expansion, to create opportunities for ourselves, not just wait for things to happen, but to create opportunities. There was an old vaudeville actor in the United States by the name of Milton Berle, and he had a great quote. He says that if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. So create the opportunities for yourself and not just wait for things just to happen and to fall into your lap. So it is about building relationships. It's about understanding what the customers want and working within the confines of how the customers want to be dealt with. These are strategies that we must, at this point in time, start to look at and implement in order for us to move forward and continue to be successful. So when we start talking about how we specialize, this is a big, for those of you who saw me speak at the conference, I'm a big fan of this. And that is developing strategies where you're more strategic in developing vertical and lateral markets. And when we start talking about vertical markets, we're talking about markets like, and these are broad: hospitality, banking and finance, medical, health and wellness or fitness. And we have identified over 45 different, I think it's 45 different vertical markets. Now, within those vertical markets, there's many sub-vertical markets that you can deal with as well. So for instance, if you look at banking and finance, you can start looking at ways like banking and finance could be just credit unions, it could be banks, it could be accountants, it could be any number of things that really fall under that category. But from a broad vertical sense, if we, like for instance, if we look at financial here, and one of the things that I love doing to become more strategic is to try to narrow the focus in which I go after these vertical markets. It makes no sense if you say, I want to deal with all the financial markets in Sydney, Australia. It's just too broad. So how do we narrow that down? And this all ties back into how do we strategically market to these companies, et cetera. So if we look at, for instance, financial, and this is how we narrow this down. We take the financial market and then we say banks in Australia, specifically Sydney, that have more than 5 branches, 500 plus members, and are bilingual, let's say. So now you've taken this massive market in let's say financial globally, and you've wound up narrowing this down to a very finite group of people that you want to work with. There could be various reasons why you want to do this. For instance, people that have companies that have 5 or more branches have more employees, greater opportunity. Bilingual, you may indeed be bilingual of some sort, so that gives you an advantage or an edge where you can work in that particular space. But again, working through these vertical markets is really, I believe, one of the most critical components of being successful. It's worked for me on many fronts. Now, if you decide to do something along these lines, I recommend that you look at developing about 4 to 5 vertical markets. And I'm confident, and I believe this sincerely, that if you have 5 vertical markets or even 4 vertical markets that you're working in on a religious basis, and I mean that's really truly focused on understanding that market, working that market space, you would not have time to do anything else in your day-to-day life. And the positive about this is that once you become recognized as an expert in that particular area or that field, it really truly does help and precipitate the idea and concept that your name can go viral in that space. So that's in my opinion, that is very, very important, and it's proven incredibly successful for me throughout the years. Now, the other side is lateral markets. Now, your expertise may be in certain areas in lateral markets. For instance, you may have a background in human resources. You may have a background in marketing or sales or whatever. So if you can hone in on those, so you could actually look at lateral markets as being a specialized area. For instance, you could become the expert as it relates to human resources. So for instance, what are some of the challenges that you would think that, let's say, human resources have? So if you look at the various challenges that affect human resources, we have diversity. They're involved in training. They're also involved in attrition, or actually keeping people on board. Recruitment, the development of new talent, retaining those talents, and also benefits. So I look at all these areas, for instance, as being pain points. So if I want to be strategic working with human resources, if I understand all the dynamics that face human resources people working within that department, like we just mentioned, diversity, training, attrition, and the like. And if I can create solutions around those challenges and pain points that they have, I now have become more of an integral partner to that particular client within that vertical market. So if you take it to the next step, what's really interesting is when you combined those two segments of both vertical and lateral. So let's say you look at the medical community and human resources in medical. The one thing that's interesting is that human resources, despite the vertical market, all experience similar challenges. So when you can hit that vein or that axis, if you will, when you can just hone in on that, and that's where you really get down to the nitty gritty of everything in terms of if you focus on human resources and within those 5 vertical markets, you can really narrow that niche down to become incredibly strategic and, again, much more of a strategic partner, if you will, for your clients. But this level of segmentation really does drive laser focus into how you're helping customers move the needle forward. And that attention is what clients are looking for. And this actually creates this amazing sense and comfort with your clients that you're knowledgeable in that particular area, in that space. You're not a generalist. You are a specialist. And that's what I believe that your clients are looking for nowadays. Now, one of the other things that is really important is that people that are developing, becoming more strategic, they are methodical. They have a plan. They know what they're doing. They know who they're targeting. They know what they're going after. And I can't tell you how many calls I take on a weekly basis where people are just running through the motions day in and day out, doing the same thing over and over again. And as Einstein says, that's like insanity and expecting a different result by doing the same thing. It won't happen. You have to look at ways to diversify, think different, be strategic. Now, when I talk about having a plan, this was shocking to me. I did a survey for several hundred people within the industry, and I asked them the question, how many of you have a marketing plan? And it was incredible that only 30% of the people that I asked said that they actually have a marketing plan. The crazy thing is 3% of them only had it written down. So for us, and I'm throwing myself into this category, us type single, double, and triple A type salespeople that we have it all in our head, we know what's going on, we've got it all figured out. Guess what? The reality is you don't. If you don't have it committed to paper and in writing where you can actually review it on a day-to-day basis, guess what? There is an issue there. You cannot continue to do this. You cannot build a strategic business. You cannot be a strategic salesperson without having a plan. Without the plan, you're potentially doomed either, at worst case, you're doomed for failure, but in most cases, you're just doomed just to get stuck in the quagmire, if you will, and just going over and over again. But this statistic really shocked me, that people don't have a strategy. They don't have a plan. And furthermore, the ones that did, as I mentioned, didn't have it in writing, only 3%. So for you to develop this plan. Hopefully at some point we can do a webinar on creating a successful marketing plan. What does that look like? What are the components that go into that? How does that tie into your content marketing, your outbound marketing, uncovering, resuscitating old customers, getting more deeply entrenched with your existing customers, prospecting for the right customers, doing all of those things and having a succinct plan, a strategy, as I mentioned, that'll take you from point A to point B. And again, that's something that is scalable and makes a whole lot of sense. So it is important that if you decide to do this, and I would highly encourage you to have this plan, but create it via niches, review it, work it, and then tweak it, eliminate where the dead wood is, and then move the needle forward. It makes a whole lot of sense. The other thing too that I find with people that are highly strategic is that they're very flexible. And what I mean by flexible is that they truly are open to all possibilities. They go into things with their eyes wide open. Now, I do encourage people when you're dealing with people, like let's say at a trade fair, or you're working with people or talking to people and you're networking, whatnot, you just don't know what the mindset is of other individuals. Like I have been around folks that have said, 10% of something is better than 0% of nothing. So if I sell an order for $10,000 and I make, $1,000 on it, I'm okay with that. So I encourage people, and I'm not a big fan of that mindset, and so I'm a bit closed-minded to that, and it's kind of contradictory to what I'm saying. But what I want you to understand is go into things open-minded. Ingest as much as you can, take in as much as you can, and understand different perspectives and different point of views, but just be careful of what you digest. Don't just buy into it because it's the next shiny object, but look at it, analyze it, and say, and what's the next step? What's good for one person may indeed not be good for another. But as I work through my consulting practice and work with my clients, my biggest thing is I want people to run a successful, sustainable business that's as highly profitable as possible. So in order to do that, you really do have to come at things with an open mindset. You have to be actively listening to your customers. I've been on sales calls with salespeople that I had in the past, and I was shocked at how quick they were trying to close the deal. And by doing so, they left so many opportunities on the table for additional sales and different opportunities because they were so focused on getting the deal and getting out of there that they weren't listening to what the client was saying. And I think by actively listening to the client, looking the client in the eye, this is what a strategist does. Because they really want to understand the underpinnings of what's going on. Where are the opportunities? Where are the challenges? How do they tie in together? They're looking at things on a micro level and a macro level at the same time. They're engaging the customer at a different level. And they're not focused on the sale, they're more focused on the solution, understanding that by doing that, you'll be exceeding the client's expectation. And at the end of the day, the money will be there. The sale will be there. So again, being flexible, open to possibilities, a good listener with an open mindset, looking and analyzing and asking the right questions to define what the opportunities are, and then developing the solutions around that will certainly exceed any and all expectations. So keep that door wide open and being flexible. One of the other things that I found with strategic salespeople is they're highly effective time managers. As my buddy Joe Charbonneau said, God rest his soul, he said that these are the 3%ers in the business. These are the ones that are the avid list makers. In fact, they have lists for their lists. That's what they do. And I will tell you that I have found that having a good CRM package, and that is effectively using the technology that's out there, using a great CRM package, being able to connect with customers on a regular basis, doing the things that you say you're going to do in a timely manner, under-promising and over-delivering on a regular basis. This is the thing that's important. One of the other things too is that we have this tendency to want to say yes all the time, instead of just knowing your limitations, working strategically. And I guess I should push this in here as well. As distributors, or don't like using that term, but as marketing professionals, you're dealing with our suppliers that are professionals as well, and they're amazing at what they do. How do we strategically work with them and understand what their limitations are? How do we maintain a loyal base to those suppliers so that we're not flitting back and forth and looking for the cheapest price? It really is kind of funny when I see how much time people waste on trying to save 2 cents instead of really maintaining a strong relationship with the supplier. As a former supplier and as a former marketing executive owning my own company, when I made this shift, not to worry so much about how cheap I can get it, but really focusing in on working with the suppliers that really help make me shine in front of my customers. Oh my, can't begin to tell you how helpful they became, how engaging they became, how willing they were to bend over backwards to help, because they knew they weren't being played as a pawn. They were being used as a strategic element to my business, to your business, to help them grow and to foster and to be more profitable. So sometimes we have to understand, when is it okay to say no, even if you have to walk away from the business. If it doesn't make sense, I know that we would all love to be able to say yes, but some cases it just doesn't make sense and it's not feasible. Why? If you're a strategist, you're going to know when to say no and know when to say yes. One of the other things that I find that from effective time managers, they know how to delegate. Us type A people, we feel like we have a cape on our back and a big S on our chest. We're Superman, Superwoman. We can do everything ourselves. It's easier for me to do it myself because I can do it quicker, faster, smarter. But the thing is, if you don't give someone else the opportunity to grow, feeding somebody else some opportunities for them to offload some of the what I would call non-revenue generating tasks that take place in your life, you're going to continue to do the same thing. As we said at the show at APPA, the one thing that we all have in common globally, nobody has more of it, nobody necessarily has less of it, and that's 24 hours in a day. How do you choose to spend it? So if you want to be a strong, strategic salesperson, you must become more effective with your time management, learning how to use technology to your advantage, under-promising and over-delivering, knowing when to say yes and obviously knowing when to say no, making lists, following those tasks, and then learning to delegate. This would really help move the needle forward for you. When we talk about effective delegation, one of the things that I love using different resources that I have found over the years. I'm a big fan of using, and I'm a soul man. Like for instance, my speaking and consulting practice, I have no one that works with me. I book all my own travel. I book all my own hotels. I do all my own research. I build all my own PowerPoints. But there came a time in my particular space, and I'm sure that you've experienced as well, is that you can't do it all and be effective and be sane. If you have a family, you can't be a good father and a good husband, a good wife, a good mother, and then be great at business and do all that and be 100% effective. At some level, you have to delegate. Like, when you tell your kids, please take out the rubbish. Or if you need something painted, hey, honey, do you mind painting that? Or doing something, you can't do it all. The reality is you only have so much time. So becoming effective at delegating is critical. So you need to align with strategic partners. You can see how all this ties in. I like doing unique things. For instance, in my PowerPoints, I did Don Bradman. I did a voiceover for Don Bradman. I had a friend of mine who's from Australia. He did a voiceover. I sent it to a guy that I found on Fiverr. I found a picture of Don Bradman. I had him do the link. It was brilliant. It cost me nothing to get it done, but it looks good. I don't know how to do that. I don't have the capacity to do that, but certainly finding a strategic partner that can help me do that is amazing. And through this process of delegation, you want to make sure that you're setting joint expectations. And I go back to that thing about asking, suppliers, what is it that you can and what is it that you cannot do? What are the limitations? What are your capabilities? And then work within those timeframes. I also we go back to the slide that we talked about being open-minded. I love it when a supplier says, I've never really tried that, but let's give it a go. Let's see if it'll work. Or let's try a different way that we can probably print something or decorate something in a different manner. And I think that that is where the revelation comes in. Unique things spawn from that. So you're not going to get that unless you really work tightly with someone, succinctly with someone, setting those joint expectations. And believe me, that shows and shines big time. Part of this delegation process too is being accountable, being self-accountable. One of the hardest things that I find most people struggle with is owning what they've done, or owning in some cases what they haven't done. And that level of accountability is something that we see that is rare, more rare day in and day out. Interestingly enough, 3 years ago, I did a seminar at the PPAI Expo on accountability begins with you. And I would have sworn that I would have had 3 people in that class. But surprisingly, there were over 200 people that attended that workshop. And it was amazing to me that how many people really wanted to have a deeper understanding of really what that meant. So if you can think about that, what is it about what you do on a daily basis? Where do you fall down? How can you improve? How can you make a difference? If I'm taking on too much and things are falling through the cracks, own it. Delegate that to someone else. If you want to be strategic and you want to create that level of certainty with your customer that you are different and unique, you're going to have to learn how to start delegating effectively in order to be more effective, because you, no question, are the best asset to your company. Those of you that are selling out there, without sales, you have nothing. Now, certainly you need other people around you to do other tasks and whatnot. You need great suppliers, but at the end of the day, you are the greatest employee of your company if you're a salesperson. And here's, for those of you who are on this call that are salespeople for another company, that's okay. Maybe your mind shift should be, yes, I work for this company, but my little sales pocket here is my little company. And I tell you, when I worked for other folks, that's the way I ran my sales. It's that this is my little mini company within their company. Now I have to do certain things to conform to what they need me to do and processes that they have in place. But I'm telling you, I'm owning everything that I've done. I'm owning making sure things get done. I'm delegating where I can, and I have that opportunity. But it is critical for you moving forward to learn how to effectively delegate in order to be successful, or to continue to be successful. One of the other things too I find is that people that are strategic are ridiculous research addicts. And I guess I fall into that category, and I'm sure most of you do too. But you have to know your customers. You have to know every aspect about your customers. This is no degradation to anyone on this call, but I would guarantee that if we sat down and we looked at your books, I would guarantee that the vast majority of your large customers, you're probably only involved in about maximum 20-25% of the potential sales you could be pulling out of there. And it's because we don't take the time to really get to know the customers at a core level, at a grassroots level. We're not doing research on them. We're not digging down. We're not doing web diving on their customers and understanding what type of events do they do throughout the course of the year. We're not sitting down and saying to them, let's look at a strategic plan for all the things that you're doing throughout the course of the year. I know that I'm not going to guarantee to get this business. I have to earn this business every day, but I want to know what it is so that I can be proactive. And you can do this by researching and digging and understanding more about what's going on within your clients. And that also goes for prospects. The other side of it too is a strategic salesperson takes the time to understand the competition. What is their competition doing? If I have one of my competitors in at the same place that I'm working, what are they doing different than I am that I can't secure that business? How can I be the very best best supplier, excuse me, or the best marketing strategist or distributor, if you want to call it that, to those existing customers? How can I be the very best? Where am I falling down? Raise your hand and ask the hard questions. What can I do better? And by research doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go onto the internet or you're going to the web or going to the library. It might be, your research might be just asking some questions of the customer, going directly to the customer and saying, or doing a survey. How am I doing? How many of you do a survey? How many of you do a regular survey to say, hey, how am I doing? How could I improve? We all would love to think that we're doing a great job. I would like to think so too. When I get my reviews back from speaking, I guarantee you there's a few reviews in there that are not the most favorable. And that's okay. But I want to know that so that I can make those improvements. If I go around with my head in the air and my head in the clouds thinking, oh, everything that I'm doing is great, I'm fooling myself. There's always room for improvement. So I want to be able to research, understand that, so that I can be better and I can be a better strategist for my customers and ultimately for my company. By being strong in the research area, you have this ability now, if you tie it back into the vertical markets that we talked about earlier, if you're really looking at those vertical markets and drilling down and understanding what's going on in the market shifts, you'll know you'll know long before something goes sideways that there's a problem. You'll know that that problem's there, and you'll be able to be proactive in reacting to that, and not just being reactive and sitting there walking around like, what in the world just happened? Like what happened to many, many people when pharma broke loose and basically banned the use of promotional merchandise. That thing was 18 months in the works, and everybody walked around with their heads in the cloud like, what are you talking about? And the reality is, if you had done your research, you were working in that particular vertical and really understand what was going on, guess what? You could have done a very good job to probably circumvent that problem long before it really landed. So again, becoming addicted to research and understanding, and I guess more research is just really like you're doing today, educating yourself. This is important. This is important that you're taking the time to do this, and I applaud each of you that are on this call because it is critical to you moving forward. And so by doing this research, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be able to hone those vertical markets and those lateral markets in order to be more successful. This indeed will increase your credibility with your audience, your prospects, your clients, and also ultimately, my favorite thing is to make you as profitable as possible. The other thing too is I love taking the consultative approach and not a sales approach necessarily. I love the power of questions. I think that if you are asking a lot of questions, and I guess I should say a lot of good questions, then once again, you'll be able to uncover or peel back the layers of the onion in order to discern what the real challenge and the problem is for the client. Clients, I would venture to say that most clients do not have a full understanding of the scope, the depth and breadth of what you can bring to the table. I'm sure that most of your clients, like most of my clients when I had my company, until I made a mind shift, they thought of me for one or two things: t-shirts, bumper stickers, hats. But they didn't think about me on the big picture. And it wasn't until I took and made my mind shift and changed and really understood what I needed to do to really educate and train my customers, nothing was going to happen. So there's what I call the power of 40. The statistics that I have read have said that you should have 40 questions prepared when you go in to talk to a customer. Now, before all of you panic and think that I want you to scribble down 40 questions to go in and ask your customer, you should be prepared with 40 questions, and that can vary, that can change depending on who you're talking to. Now, a lot of those questions you may be able to get answered on your own by doing research, understanding. So now when you go in and you talk to the customer, instead of saying, when's your event, how many do you want, and what's your budget, maybe it's more deeper level questions like, I understand in doing research on the web that you're getting ready to launch a new product in 3 months at the upcoming trade show. I was just curious, what have you done in the past to to do pre-marketing for an event like that, and how successful has it been, and how do you gauge your success at a trade show? Those are deep, discerning questions that most people don't ask. And most of the time, your clients are going to go, oh, I don't know what you mean. Well, you go to a trade show in order to attract the right people that are going to come in order to see what your offering is. How do you measure how successful the trade show has been? So if you can do those type of things, and that's just one example of how you can ask that question, depending on the answer, would lead to more questions. And the more you dig and dig and dig, the more I often find that the more opportunities present themselves. So it is important that when you take this consultative approach, you need to be what I refer to as an active listener, not a passive listener. You need to, and I think you do that by looking at someone in the eye, listening to what they say, repeating the answer back for clarity. And then, and only then, can you start to uncover that. That's the consultative approach. And you think about it, and if you go to a doctor and you walk into the doctor's office and he doesn't consult you, and he says, so what's going on? And you say, my head hurts. And he says, well, we're going to go do surgery tomorrow. You're sitting there going, well, that doesn't make any sense. I know that's kind of a silly example, and far-fetched, but it's the truth. You want somebody that's going to listen, that understands what's going on, what your challenges are. In the case of a medical, I fell sideways. It's been like this for 3 days. It only hurts when I lift my arm up at this angle, so that they can diagnose the problem properly. No different than here. This is no different here. So you can either be the pharmacist that dispenses the medicine, or you can be the specialist that helps diagnose the problem and then creates the solution to solve the problem. By delivering the solution, leading with creativity, having a consultative approach, and asking good germane questions, and be prepared with 40, I tell you what, it will make a huge difference as you move forward. The other thing too is they're creative marketers. I'm going to go through a couple of creative case histories here, some of which you've seen before, so I won't take a ton of time with those. But the reality is,
Hi, Cliff, it's Sabina here. You seem to have dropped out. I'll hang on the line for a minute or so. Yeah, you've just dropped out for a second there.
Okay, everybody good now? I'm sorry. Okay, so it definitely. Everybody good?
All good.
Okay, so again, just to back up a little bit, I believe that if you start leading with creativity, and selling product is fine as well, but if you can do something that sets you apart from the competition, I found that being creative and innovative really was one of those things. That was the ticket for me. May not be for you, but it was the ticket for me. It was the thing when I marketed my company, I marketed myself creatively. I did things that were unique and different. I did things that resonated with a particular audience. And only then could I say to my customers, you know what, this is maybe something that you should try. If I'm not going to do it, it's like the cobbler's son that has no shoes, right? I need to make sure that I'm demonstrating that I believe enough in what I'm talking about and what I'm pushing to my customers that I'm also doing it. And I will tell you, it's a notable point of difference. The people that I work with now that do this on a regular basis, it's interesting. I probably, in this big organization that I consult for right now, I probably have about 30 people that I consult with weekly. literally everybody that has embraced this concept is about 7 to 8% higher in gross profit, higher average order size, higher client acquisition than anybody else in the organization. And this is myself and the other two guys that work alongside me as a consultant. We just find that people that have embraced this concept have just had more success, more profitability, better business models than the people that haven't. So these are one of the things that, I will tell you that a lot of times people say, well, you know what, I'm just not creative. I say, you haven't allowed yourself to be creative yet, but the opportunity is certainly there. It's not necessarily for everyone. I know people that just have said, I'm just not going to do it, which is fine. That's cool. But again, if you want to be strategic, you want to be different, you want to be perceived as being something different, you have to do things differently. Whatever that is for you, whatever that niche works for you, then so be it. One of the other things too is, as part of all this, is charging for your time. It drives me crazy to see the people in this industry that they make their money selling stuff. And the amazing God-given gift that you have of innovation and creativity and doing things uniquely, and all the tools that you have at your disposal at the trade fair. When I walked through that trade fair at APPA, I was blown away by some of the ideas, some of the things that I haven't seen in the US. And I'm thinking, boy, I could take that and put that in the package, come up with a creative concept and theme around that. That would probably resonate with a particular market in this particular space. So again, looking at those type of things and taking that gift that you have and profiting from that, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So again, I encourage you to look at that. As strategic salespeople, I believe, do things from a very highly level, a creative bent, and it's really important. So a couple of quick case histories. For instance, you look at a notepad here, a pencil, and a business card inside a sleeve that says, thanks for penciling me in. This is so simplistic, folks. This is such a simplistic call to action piece. You can see down here at the 9:30 line, it says, in this case, Paul Zaffarana is calling today, important. So this strategic marketing piece was targeted at sales managers. Just love the opportunity to talk to you. If you look at some of the other copy on the other side, it says just 8.5 minutes of your time will make a memorable difference. The strategy is when I call and I follow up with that person around 9:30 that I've sent this to, I have my pitch down, and it's not really a pitch so much, it's just an introduction that doesn't take any longer than 6 to 7 minutes. I want them to understand what I do, how that can be of benefit and value to them, and I'd love the opportunity, because I'm trying to stay within the 8.5 minute time frame I promised. Love the opportunity to meet with you again, either on the phone or in person, whatever works for you. We have had 80%, which between 60 and 80% success rates in terms of setting appointments with this, either on the phone or in person. So again, when I talk about doing things that are different and unique, this is something that might cost you $8 a piece to put something like this together, everything in at low minimums. Most people, I had one person say, well, why would I do that? Why would I do that to get people to buy pencils? Well, it's not the point to get people to buy pencils. This is a door opener. This is to break through the clutter. How do I get through the clutter with all the people that are trying to bang on the door to try to get through to the decision maker? How do I do it in a memorable way that when somebody sees it, it creates that wow factor? This is one way to do it. This is an amazing creative way to do it. If you want to target marketing people, this is a piece that I put together that is, we took all of our creative case histories. We took our top 6 creative case histories and we put them into a viewfinder. This all went into a custom box. You actually had a little brochure, and each of these little case histories, you see this one right here, the tennis ball mailer that I'll talk about in a moment. This tennis ball mailer was one of the images in the window. But our whole concept here is a new vision for creative marketing. As you scan through this viewfinder, you'll see that each of those slides in there are numbered, and they coincide with the slides that are in this book, which really tell a story. What was the customer's, the client brief? What was the objective of the campaign? What was the execution and the strategy? And what was the overall results? as they leaf through this book, as they get to the end, the 7th window says, now that you've seen our vision, let us help you with yours. So we're just tying all the pieces and the parts together here in a very unique way, and we make it interactive. We make it engaging. We want to do things that are unique and different. We don't want to send somebody to a catalog. We want people to call us and say, I want to talk to you about developing something similar to this, or I really was impressed with that. Do you do polo shirts? I'd love to work with you. I'm happy to write the business. But at the same token, I want to be able to get them to see me at a different level. You want to get people to see you at a different level, on a higher strategic level, as we're discussing here today. This is a great case history. Many of you probably have heard this 100 times, but this is one of my favorite case histories where we actually, from the process of utilizing a creative marketing piece to break through the clutter and get in the door, they asked me, can you develop something for me that would help resonate and help generate more members at our particular tennis club? And in the past, they were doing just regular brochure, getting maybe 1 or 2 new customers or new members from that brochure mailer, sending out 5,000 pieces. In this particular case, we took almost a similar budget, created this piece here that only targeted 300 people, that generated 75 new members from this creative piece. Now, think about that for a minute. Do you think if a customer got those type of results, you think they'd be back? Of course they would. Time and time and time again. The beauty about things like you see here, this is done for a tennis club to generate membership. The reality is this can be replicated over and over and over to any tennis club, as long as it doesn't infringe on this particular customer. You could take this same concept and potentially use it in Australia, in the UK, in Canada, any place where they play tennis, any place where they're trying to generate membership. Something like this or a derivative thereof could be the thing that could really spark the innovation and creativity that makes you more strategic. So people look at you as not just somebody that's flogging product and trying to, sell them stuff, but really trying to develop a marketing solution that'll help them achieve and accomplish a goal that they're trying to accomplish within their organization. So we want to be able to create a win-win environment. Bottom line, that is very, very important. So if we can create that, what I always say is it's important to solicit and be open to feedback. And again, that's where the accountability comes into play. Develop multiple touch points as you're reaching out to people. You can't, so many people will do 1 or 2 calls and not get any response and get fed up and just drop the ball. Sometimes you have to have multiple ways of reaching out and touching people, right? Make whatever you do, make it relevant to the customer. Make it unique to the customer. Make it so that the customer understands that it's not that's why I hate doing things that are generic, that everybody else can get done. I don't want to go to a supplier and say, oh, you got a distributor self-promotion there? Yeah, and everybody else here in the room can get the same thing. I want to do something different. I want to take that piece that you've created and that you're giving me a self-promotion on, and I may want to take it and creatively package that, come up with a theme, and I want to implement that in a different, unique way. I'm willing to go do the extra mile. There's a great quote that says there's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is just a little extra. So the question is, are you willing to do just a little bit extra to make a huge difference on the impact that you're going to have with the customer? Are you willing to go a little bit further to help a customer have something that works in such a powerful, impactful way that resonates with their particular end user, where they get this massive result instead of just trying to get the order and run? Right? You want to make sure that you're looking at this, reviewing the relationship. It must work for both parties. If you can create that win-win scenario, and that's what I think strategic salespeople do. They always are looking at how do I have a win-win philosophy and create a win-win environment for both me, the client, and ultimately the end user. So again, just things for you to keep in mind there. Lastly, as we wrap this up and final thoughts and next steps, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any. Becoming strategic means being a great strategic partner in every way. That means working closely with your preferred supplier network, being strategic with them, not looking for the cheapest price all the time. Because it's interesting, I've found people that want the supplier, not necessarily, none of you, supplier to bend over backwards to give them the best price. And then all of a sudden, that particular marketing person gets ticked off when the end client asks for the same thing. So I'm very adamant about working with the supplier and being strategic with them. I want to be strategic with the customer. I want the customer to see ultimate value in me and say, wow, if I'm constantly beating up XYZ to try to get the better price, I'm not going to have that resource available to me that's going to ask me the right questions, that's going to help me define where my challenges are, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important that you create that strategy that is a win-win, making everything you do about the customer. And that when you go back and do your review of your brand, and our next webinar is going to be your brand speaks volume. What story does yours tell? We talk about that. You know, when you're doing your collateral material, et cetera, is it all about you and boastful about how great I am? Or is it, this is what I do and this is how it benefits you? Make it about them. Know their market. Know their customers. Know their challenges. Know what they're trying to accomplish, where they're trying to grow, where their challenges are and pitfalls. Peel those layers of the onion back. Know your customers. Know your competitors. Know what's going on in your space. Constantly look and review your work, your website, your collateral material. Is it speaking the language that you want your customers and the light that you want them to see you? Are you telling them verbally, face to face, oh yeah, we're great, we're strategic, we're strategic in what we do, we're creative, but yet they go to your website and they see no creativity whatsoever? It's important for you to review that on a regular basis. Have that plan that we talked about. Develop a unique selling proposition, something that really resonates. And again, making it about them. Engage with the customer, make it relevant, and you will have ultimate success creating that image of being a strategic salesperson in that space. There's a great Chinese proverb that says, tell me and I forget, show me and I understand, I remember, engage me and I understand. You want people to understand, when you engage people in what you do at a higher level, they really get it. They understand it. You just can't talk about it. You just can't show them a little bit. You have to engage them at a higher level. And folks, by doing that, I believe that you will be incredibly successful, as you probably are now, but you'll probably be light years beyond that if you just look at these things that we talked about today in a different light. Lastly, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody that's on the call. This is my speaker contact information. If you'd like to connect with me on my weekly blog, 30 Seconds to Greatness, I'm more than happy to set that up for you. But Sabina, if there's any questions at this point, I'll be more than happy to entertain and answer those.
Hi, Cliff. Thanks again for a great presentation. I can't see anything up there at the moment, but I know that they do come to mind after the presentation. So everybody who's online, Cliff's email address is there if you would like to contact him directly, or alternatively, please do feel free to contact myself and I can get any questions answered for you. Now, we are lucky enough that we do have 2 more webinars this year with Cliff. So the next one will be scheduled for the 11th October, which is the 10th of October for Cliff. So I do appreciate him jumping online. It's quite late over there in the US. So yeah, so we do appreciate you taking the time to be with us. So on behalf of Cliff, pardon, sorry, what was that, Cliff?
I said it's all good.
Beautiful. So On behalf of Cliff and APPA, thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow you will receive a follow-up email with a link to view today's recording. And we look forward to seeing you and speaking to you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, cheers. Thank you.